The Black Ops 6 beta left me feeling a little dizzy. I don't know if it was just me, but every second of every game felt like a 100-meter sprint, and I finished every match feeling incredibly overstimulated. This felt like a more recent change, too. My last Call of Duty was 2022's Modern Warfare 2, and I do not remember this being so chaotic. So I re-downloaded that one and played a couple of matches, and sure enough, this felt normal. I wasn't crazy in feeling like that there were drastic changes in the moment to moment. This realization showed me that Activision has reached a new
It's a
level.
little hard to celebrate anything right now, given all the events in the Middle East.
What Treyarch and their sweatshop coders have made here feels deliberately concocted in a way that caters to the lower attention span that TikTok and other short form entertainment formats like it have chiseled out of our once normal brains. And while I was talking to my friends about this change, I got a little heat for complaining because I liked Titanfall. And that made me pause for a second. I began to think a lot more thoroughly about why faster movement shooter games like Titanfall never really bothered me in this way. Am I just getting old? Would a return to Titanfall make me realize that I'm just not that guy anymore? No, 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 no. This is pacing in first-person shooters.
Travis, it's kill or be killed.
You don't normally hear the term pacing being thrown around in a conversation about games like Call of Duty. At least I don't. It's a vague term, and in the context of multiplayer Twitch shooters, it's a little harder to nail down. There are three pillars that I want to talk about today that determines the pace of a shooter. That's map design, movement, and time to kill. All of these create a foundation for what I believe is the most important part of pacing in any given multiplayer game, and that's breathing room, which we'll talk about at the end. These design decisions are very interwoven with each other, and sometimes you can't talk about one without bringing up another. This video is broken up into chapters, but I will be going back and forth to illustrate points because they're so inseparable. Time to kill is the most obvious factor. How long does it take to kill your enemy? TTK is one of the most discussed parts of these games, and the discussions turn into arguments, turn into people getting doxxed. So, for the sake of brevity and safety, we're going to keep the discussion high level. Time to kill, very simply, affects the lengths of firefights and therefore the amount of brain power someone's going to use when they get into one. Call of Duty's low TTK, thrupled with its small, tight-knit maps and instantaneous respawns, make for a classic loop that's further emphasized by its high production values and consistently great gunplay. These games have a strong emphasis on reaction time over total accuracy and strategy, but that doesn't mean strategy is thrown out the window. Someone who just wants to relax can enjoy the game just as much as anyone else, but a well-rounded competitive player that can execute on all three will dominate the match. However, the low TTK means that our relaxed gamer can still kill the sweat under the right circumstances. Ideally, everyone gets to engage with the game as much or as little as they like and still have a good time. Games with a higher TTK usually place a higher emphasis on strategy, accuracy, and map knowledge, and therefore asks for a higher degree of player engagement with its respective mechanics. Apex Legends has healing and inventory management mechanics that reward high-speed movement paired with clever map knowledge and team communication. Given there's no third party to ruin the example, the average Apex fight consists of trading shots with the enemy team until one team has to go on the defensive and heal, which gives the opportunity for the other team to go on the offensive and take them out. But the hero shooter aspect of this game makes sure that the fight isn't over until it's completely over. If the TTK was similar to Call of Duty's, it would fall apart. Knocking an enemy in 0.3 seconds, given the healing times were all the same, would discourage so many possible combat situations and invalidate all of the strategies and teamwork that makes Apex so good in the first place. And Call of Duty with a TTK like Apex on the same maps would just ruin the flow of the moment-to-moment COD is so popular for. Is there anything wrong with a high or low time to kill? No, it all comes down to what the game calls for. TTK sets the pace of individual fights, so there's no way we can determine if a game's pace is good or bad just by looking at that one thing. The places in which these fights are delivered to you at are just as important to the bigger picture. Multiplayer FPS games are home to some of the most iconic locations in the medium, and even pop culture. Nuketown, Blood Gulch, Zanzibar, Two Fort, Rust, Dust. Just think about it. These maps range from small squares of land with buildings and cover strewn about to massive, wide open areas that can turn a Twitch shooter into Napoleonic-era warfare. Map design is one of the biggest dictators for the pace of any given game. And up on shipment, you're about to experience the worst 10 minutes of your life. Queue up for carrier, you might as well just jump into the fucking ocean. There is no such thing as a good or bad time to kill, but in any given game, you probably have a rough mental list of the maps you like from most to least. You may not know why, but you know that when shipment comes up, you're probably gonna want to skip it. The 3-lane map is the most popular design choice in these games. It's basic, but it's structurally sound. A 3-lane map is a very effective way to feed you enemies quickly and efficiently. A digital meat grinder, if you will. However, not all 3 lanes are created equally. More often than not, maps are interspersed with structures like buildings or walls that provide elevation or cover, giving each map its own feel. Recharge from Halo Infinite is one of my recent favorites. Unlike Shipment, Recharge is an asymmetrical 3-lane map with several distinct levels of elevation. Unlike Shipment. I always enjoy playing on this one because I'm encouraged to strategize and play with angles in a way that no other Halo Infinite map really does for me. Mirage is my favorite Counter-Strike map for the same reason. But how do good or bad multiplayer maps affect pacing? Let's talk about team size real quick. When goals are set for the type of multiplayer game that's being developed, a map is designed with the understanding that there are going to be a certain amount of players occupying it. The map is also made with the mechanics those players have access to in mind, but we'll get to that in a minute. If the map is too big, then you don't have enough players running into one another often enough to keep them engaged. Couple this with a low TZK like Call of Duty, and your average experience will amount to running in circles through a map before you get shot in the back and get sent all the way back to spawn to repeat the goddamn cycle all over again. A lot of games have separate modes for bigger maps with twice as many people or more on a team and vehicles for quicker ground coverage. I think this is just my personal preference, but I don't really care for these, especially when the TTK is low. The only one I've ever really been able to get into is Battlefield 1's, but besides that, it's why I never really took anything like Warzone too seriously. There's too much time in between fights, and when you do finally get into one, they're just too short. The Gulag gives you and your team another chance to get back into the mix, and I appreciate the effort, but there's still just a huge disconnect for me. Bad pacing. A map that's too small for the amount of players occupying it creates its own set of issues. If you get shot as fast as you spawn, the map is too small. They can be fun as a little novelty, but after my 5th match of Stash House during the free weekend of Modern Warfare 3, I just could not take it anymore. It was an overstimulating mess that Black Ops 6 now just does not let up on. Not simply because the map was too small, it actually might have been fun if everyone wasn't just bolting all over the fucking place.
Alright, let's do this.
Titanfall, on its face, is faster than COD. You can launch yourself across the map at unreal speeds with some well-placed grenades, or to quote a former podcast host, Toby Maguire your way out of a sticky situation. But speed does not equal pacing. The movement mechanics in whatever game are intertwined with its map design and time to kill, and they have to serve each other equally to form a well-rounded experience. You can go fast as fuck in Titanfall, but the huge open maps and the low pilot TTK balances it all out. The tall buildings themselves facilitate the movement mechanics of the pilots like the wall running, and they're simultaneously covered from the Titans, which is the second side of this coin. The pilots are fun to control, and I would never say it gets old, but Respawn's coup de grace, the thing that elevates it above literally every other first-person shooter, is the way it pulls the reins back on the crazy fast movement and puts you in this trudging mechanical colossus. The huge chunks of health other Titans can dig out of you and the small pot shots pilots slowly inflict eventually force you back into the body of a pilot in the perfect amount of time that never really lets you get bored of playing as either. The pace of a Titanfall match is this beautiful back and forth, the game knowing exactly when to let you Spider-Man your way everywhere and when to give you the mech, or even more interesting, to have your enemies force you into it to even the odds. People aren't annoying about this game for no reason. It's still the real deal. And if I can get even one new player out of this video, it's a success. Good pacing. The more recent Call of Duty games, by comparison, feel lightning fast purely for the sake of it. In the beta, there wasn't a map that really stood out to me in its design, and none of them really felt like they were made for that Omni movement system that the game is leaning on so heavily. The once tight-knit maps now barely register in my brain as competent, even if they might be good, because nobody has the time to really take it in and understand the arena you're fighting in. I don't think I've seen a feature marketed so hard yet be so functionally worthless. This max pain-ass movement system feels like it would look and feel the best in third-person mode, which is something the open beta just didn't offer. And I don't fire up Call of Duty to play a third-person shooter anyway, and I bet a lot of you don't either, so what was really the point? There might be something here, actually, if the speed of the game wasn't cranked so high and if the TTK wasn't so low. High-skilled movement in Apex Legends is valuable because the higher TTK means that every shot you can avoid is an advantage gained in a fight. Longer fights means more opportunities to outmaneuver and outplay. Even if Omni movement is on par technically, getting the first shot off almost always means you're getting the kill. I really think the super sprint is to blame for everything. It was obviously implemented so people could traverse the massive Warzone maps faster, but this small decision has ballooned into a fundamental change in the core gameplay. You know, just get into the fucking wood chipper, dude. We got no time to waste. We got battle passes to buy. My core complaint is that the new Call of Duty just doesn't give you any time to breathe. Something like the finals is competitively interesting because the punishment for dying is the rug being pulled out from under you. And it sucks to have that happen, but it's also a chance for you to collect yourself and assess the situation before a teammate picks you up. If your whole team is wiped, the penalty is an excruciatingly long respawn timer. But it's an opportunity for your entire team to gather themselves and come up with a strategy. It's a clever smack on the wrist and a reminder to stick together because getting separated while these skyscrapers are collapsing on top of you is easy and probably the reason you got wiped in the first place. Once you're back in, you now have that advantage of your team charging in all at once while other teams are fighting and hopefully a little separated. Older Call of Duty games at least gave you a moment after you spawned to take everything in while you ran to the fight. But now it's constant. It's never a dull moment. Never letting you leave content. And that's just how they want.